Hello, everyone. This is SomerSand, and this is Chats about Improv. I'm Maggie Sand, and this is
I'm Johan Somers, and we have a great guest today, Michael Gellman.
Michael Gellman.
Yes.
Hi, guys. It's great to see you again.
Michael, can you tell a little bit about yourself, about your improv, and where are you from?
I'm from the States. Grew up in Minnesota, spent a lot of years in Chicago, some in New York, some in Los Angeles, and around Canada, Toronto, Edmonton, London. So that's been primarily the cities that I've spent my career in. I started in the early days of improvisation, 1968. I was 16 and I was really stupid, and as 16-year-olds are. And then I went to Second City in Chicago and spent quite a few years there. First as an actor, and then I went out to LA to act for a while, hated it, and then went to Canada. I called Second City and said, "Get me the hell out of Los Angeles. I hate it here." And they said, "Do you want to go to Canada and direct?" And I went, "You bet." So that's what I did. So I directed for 30 some odd years, 30, 40 years. And that's a long time, geez. And helped create Jeff Machowski and Martin DeMont. And a few of us created the training center in Chicago, which has become a really big deal. Now it's huge and in several cities and kind of world renowned. And we started it with a handful, 4 or 5 teachers in the front bar of Second City, Chicago. And so that a lot of my time was spent developing curriculum and developing the training center as a training center. So that's been a lot of fun. And so directing and teaching has been
Yes.
most of my career.
Okay.
I don't know if that's
That's amazing. That's amazing, Michael, because you started out at the age of 16, so you had a long career and lots of experiences. So we'd like to ask you about your improv journey during all those years. That's
that's a long.
Yeah.
That's a lot more time than you've got for. One of the things we talked about in Lyon, at least presented in Lyon, was sort of this thing I have about improvisation. And for me, it breaks into sections, and it's like improv 1.0, 2, 3, 4.0. And so I think that's a simple way to address it quickly. At least what we talking about with you two guys when we were all in France. Improvisation 1.0 was really about education. It was started in Chicago. It was primarily teachers of children. So it was grade school and middle school children. A lot of the experimentation. They had this theory, these teachers, that creative dramatics, which was a really big movement in the 30s or late 20s to World War II, really, and just after, that creative dramatics was an important part of the curriculum and should be adopted by schools. So they set out to try and teach people how to act. And these people were children of many different countries, ages, and many of them were extremely poor. They were living in a lot of this stuff started at a place called Hull House in Chicago, where they did a lot of exploration and children's theater. My mother majored in creative dramatics.
Oh.
And I said, I'm studying this stuff. It's Viola Spolin. She goes, Viola Spolin? Winifred Ward started it. I'm going to send you the books. And she did, and she was right. Winifred Ward did start, but she started the creative dramatics movement, and it was a real movement amongst teachers
Around
to
which?
revolutionize education.
What year is that now, roughly?
30s.
The 1930s. Okay.
Yeah, and my mom went to college like after World War II.
Yeah.
So I don't know, that was like in the late 40s.
Yes.
So it had been around for a while, and a lot of teachers were teaching it. A lot of her generation thought Viola Spolin was a Johnny-come-lately. From improvisers' point of view, she is considered to be the godmother of improvisation. And what she did is she started collecting. They thought, wouldn't it, if we're going to teach people how to act and tell and create their own stories, then wouldn't it be great if we found a way to teach them so it's not like clubbing over the head, it's not mathematics, it's not what people normally teach and have been for a couple hundred years. How are we going to do it? And they found that playing games could teach and be joyful all at the same time, and also accommodate a lot of these kids that spoke different languages and had different cultures and all that stuff. They were all living in the same general neighborhood of Chicago on the south side. And so they these teachers started doing games, and a lot of them, and exploring them and saying, oh, I found a new way to do this. Oh, I found a new way to do this. And so Viola wrote it all down. And then she experimented with children on how the games worked the best. So she spent years, I mean, her effort was amazing. She spent years honing the games, making sure they worked, figuring out how to teach them, how to set them up and tell students how to play, watching them play, and then having specific points that you could point out afterwards through their discussion. So all of improvisation is still that 1, 2, 3 that she and her cohorts developed. You know, tell people how to play the game, have them play the game, and realize that it's not succeeding in that game. It's just playing it. And in the playing of it, win, lose, or draw, whether you think you were great or whether you think you were terrible, you still learn. You still learn, no matter what you personally think of your efforts. Doing it is the thing. And then afterwards, the third part is exploring how to post that, how to get students to discuss it. Did anyone feel scared? Yeah, I did. Okay, good. You know, what happens when the people said yes to each other? Oh, it went better. Yeah. Okay, good. So you get Socratic method and that sort of thing. So it was a great teaching tool. And they said, well, how are we going to teach this to other teachers? And so Viola put all these games she had been working on for a long period of time and put it in a book, Improvisation for the Theater.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of permutations of that book, but that was the original, and that was to teach teachers how to teach or use improvisation to train kids to be able to do creative dramatics. So it all went back to, can kids do plays and make up their own stories? Yeah. And that was 1.0. And that was improvisation for a long period of time. It was in the school system. It was sort of, the general public didn't really know about it. It was really a thing for teachers, and in Illinois, and the Northwestern University was really instrumental. And they have, for those people who are doing research, all her paperwork and a lot of the stuff that was done at that time is all stored and has been donated to the Northwestern University Library in Chicago, and so it's a great place to. Janet Coleman, I know, is doing a book on her, and she wrote a book called The Compass. If your listeners are interested, it's great, great book.
Was the creative dramatics only taught around Chicago, or was it nationwide?
It started in Chicago, but the creative dramatics movement had spread out. But using improvisation and using gameplay to teach it was the innovation that was created in Chicago. As I said, she had worked with all these kids. So cut to just after World War II, a whole bunch of people who had been at war, people who just got out of high school, people of all from 16 to 45 were going to the University of Chicago all at the same time, like from 1945, 46, 47, 48, 49, in that era. And so there was a huge mixture of different ages, different understandings, but all of them had to test to get in. So if they passed the test, they were in. And every year they would have to pass a test. So you could go to class or not go to class. You could read the books or not read the book. But if you passed the test, you moved on. And if you didn't, you did. So anyway, that's sort of a parenthesis in all this. Some of the kids there wanted to create a theater group because the UFC, the University of Chicago, didn't have a theater group. So they got together, and that was like Ed Asner and Elaine May and a lot of people that became well known in film and television. And they all decided to create the Compass Players. And one of the guys said, well, I can kind of conduct some games that I've learned because my mother, Viola Spolin, taught games, and I can teach them to you. So it was a direct line. Paul Sills was Viola's son.
Okay.
And so he started teaching all these guys, and there was about 30 of them, the games that Viola had created for the kids, and they worked just as well for adults. And they started doing plays, and they did scenario plays. Everything we think we've innovated in improvisation in the last 20 years, they did.
Yeah.
Right? You go back and go, oh, wait, the Compass already did that. I thought it was me. Brilliant. But it all started, and then that became, for business reasons, became the Second City, or became Second City, not the Second City. And and Paul helped it, and a guy that was, anyway, people got together and created Second City from the Compass. It moved to North Side instead of the South Side of Chicago. It got a place, it got a liquor license so they could pay the actors. And so, but they found the most successful stuff was the satirical comedy. So they were doing small scenes. At that time, some of them were 5 minutes, some of them were 15 minutes. They were really cool. If anybody gets a chance to watch the 1961 archive tape of Second City, it was the original cast, and it's really extraordinary to see their work.
Where can that be seen?
It used to be, you could look it up online, but I think it's been, for a variety of reasons, taken down. And I think it's harder to find now. I don't know. I haven't looked it up in years. I bootlegged a copy when I was teaching and used it in my class, but now I should maybe put it on YouTube and really mess with it. But to me, that was improvisation 2.0. When I came into it in '68, if you said improvisational theater, it meant to people, oh, that is scenic sketch comedy. Yeah. It is songs and blackouts and scenes, and it was satirical. Most of it, some of it was just a cheap joke, but most of it was really strong satire against the powers that be. There was, it was the beatniks. It was turned into the hippies, all kind of saying F you to the government. Vietnam was going on, so people were really angry about Vietnam. And all that stuff sort of evolved. Some of it was relationships, some of it was political, some of it was social. The casts were pretty much the clown archetypes. Yeah. At that time, it was really great. And so that was 20 years. 20 years or maybe even 30 years where everybody thought of improvisation as comedy review, short skits, and blackouts and songs. And people utilized improvisation to create a set show. And then after that, they do an improv set at night for free after the show. So the new show was always be created after the current show. So you'd have a show, third act, improvisation, create the new show, material would go in. When you had enough material, you'd open a new show.
So you had a really scripted sketch show in the beginning, and then the next part of the show was basically...
Interestingly enough, it was never scripted. It was always just, if you do an improvisation, it kind of works, and you keep the stuff that works and let the rest fall away. You sort of, after you've done it 30 times, or 20 times, or whatever, in front of an audience, it gets set. So the script for Second City was always the transcript of the audio tape from opening night.
Okay.
So we do the show opening night, and then someone would type it up the next day, and then that was the script for the next, like, well, it still is, those scripts. And there were some of them were really bad mistakes because it was opening night, but the touring people for years afterwards would perform it with the mistakes. It was kind of funny. And it was exhilarating, and we were learning how to be better actors because of the improvisation. So many people from Second City went on to have pretty exciting showbiz careers because of their training in improvisation. So it became more and more respected as a way to get training. When I was going to college, they said that, well, it's not real theater, so we can't count it as any credit towards your degree because it's improvisation and that's not really theater. But then it started to get more and more respected. And so then there came along Improv 3.0.
Yeah.
And that was when people like Del and me and other people, Jeff Machowski, the people that were around at that time, started pushing the bounds. Del started exploring heralds. I was doing improvised one-act plays. Machowski was doing kind of this modified scenes that connect with scenes that connect with scenes that he's still doing today. And so it became what we called long form.
Is that around 1970? Sometime
No, it was about 1985.
85 already. Okay.
Yeah, I had just gotten fired from Second City in Toronto. Del had just gotten fired from Second City, Chicago. And Sharna Halpern created the Improv Olympic. And we started saying, okay, we can really do what we want to do. We weren't allowed to at Second City. So Del started doing heralds. I started doing what I called long form.
Yeah.
Later on, long form became a lot of things to a lot of people where the lights didn't go down. We were for 20 plus years, we were doing scene, blackout, scene, blackout, scene, blackout, blackout, song, blackout. And now there was no blackouts. So Sharna started calling everything that didn't have a blackout long form. But it was really an exciting time, and I think it affects a lot of the improvisation that happens now, where people don't even know who Viola Spolin and Second City were or are, but rather they are teaching and sort of using as a starting base Improv 3.0.
Yes.
And they stand on the shoulders of a lot of really good people, but it is later on in modern improvisation, right? And I say modern improvisation because let's face it, actors have been improvising for years. People have been telling stories around the campfire,
Yeah.
Improvisation is an ancient form and or an ancient way to tell stories, right? So this is modern day improvisation as it's taught. So 3.0 went on for a long, long time. And then, Keith Johnstone was part of that, certainly. We all kind of went, Keith, come on, man, you're making a competition, and it's not about competition, it's about coming together to create story, and we were all hippies. And Keith said, no, it's not, it's about making money and doing, it's about having fun. throw rubber bricks at the guys. He had so much fun with it.
Yeah.
And that kind of went to Europe. So a lot of, I think Match was a big part of that, right? Where they took Keith Johnstone stuff and kind of brought it to Europe. Boom Chicago was really instrumental. I think they were the first guys to really start working it, and they were working in the old form, right? They were working with improvisation 2.0 at first, which was scenes and blackouts and satire and stuff like that. And they were teaching viola. And then Keith came. So anyway, 3.0 became all these new, quote, forms, new ways of doing it. But it really didn't change what was happening inside the exoskeleton. I mean, so you were doing heralds, or you're doing one-act plays, or you were doing, birch bark, or I don't know, up your butt, or whatever the form was. I'm thinking of some of the New York stuff like Ask Cat, stuff like that,
Yeah.
which was, different forms, but inside those forms, it was still improvisation, connecting to your partner, saying yes, and working together to create story, And now 4.0 is around. And I don't know what that's going to be. And that's the most exciting part. And it's about exactly what you guys are focusing on, which is story. It's like, well, who cares about the form? Viola Spolin's game stuff is really good for getting people the DNA and teaching them the foundation. And then long form and that kind of stuff has really helped say, okay, we can explore the way we tell stories. Jonathan Pitts is doing some amazing stuff in the Pacific Rim with some of his storytelling techniques, dramatized story. Anyway, it's exploding all over the place. But it seems to me that the thing that's most important is are we telling a good story well? Can an audience that's not like a bunch of students come into the theater and see the story we've developed and created in front of their very eyes? And can they walk home and go, oh my God, that was amazing. My family's been just like that for years.
Yeah.
Or whatever they're discussing. And so I think if we're really going to look at the future of improvisation, we have to start looking at, are we telling a good story well? Our audiences, civilians, as Del Close used to call them, the civilians are coming. But are we telling our stories well, and our audiences walking away the same way they'd walk from any other theatrical enterprise?
Yeah. I
Yeah.
guess it's not just telling a good story, but like you said, telling a good story well.
Yeah.
And that's a key
No,
thing.
and I think that's improvisation 4.0. It's like, how can we tell stories? And whether it's improvised or improvised to text, or whether it's interpreting a novel or a written piece, no matter how you approach it, no matter how you come after it, we've explored all the possible ways there are, really. So now, how are we going to use it? How are we going to be responsible citizens of the, quote, art form, and use it to tell the best stories we can tell so that it becomes theater that people go to and enjoy and rely on? Because big time theater can't afford, it's going to die of its own weight. It's too expensive, it's too inaccessible. But improvisation, that's been around for the last 2,000 years nonstop. And that's very exciting to me. It's like we can go from town, even if we have to work off the back of wagons for eggs and chickens, we can tell our stories. And that's so exciting to me. Anyway, that's where I think the arc is gone. It's a pretty quick minute. There's lots of good books, read them. But you get the idea. Is like we went from games to play with children to realizing that, and we went through all sorts of mechanizations, and now we're back to, wait a minute, it's play. We have to get back to our 5-year-old self. So it's like, turns out Viola was right. You have to become a child in order to do it right.
Yeah.
That gives me a great amount of joy. I don't know why. Maybe it's just because I'm getting old.
So, Michael, there are lots of questions that come up. For example, the first one is from me. Out of all these forms, which is your favorite form of improv? The games or the story, the long form, the
I don't have one.
comedy?
I really don't. I think I really don't. I think that you should start with, if you're going to really take it seriously, you start with Viola Spolin, get the foundation, like yes and, give and take, all that stuff's in Viola's book, right? And do the games, learn what you're doing, and then pick the one that's best for you. So I don't have a favorite. I mean, I love doing heralds when Del was working with us on them, borrowed from the San Francisco committee. I like the stuff that I came up with because it's in my book, and I rather fancy my own shit.
Oh, yeah. What's the
But
title of your book, Michael? What's the title of your book?
oh, thanks for asking. It's, Process an Improviser's Journey, and
Okay.
it's my co-writer is Mary Scruggs, so she's first author. And we did
Oh,
workshops for like a year and a half, and then we collected all the notes and the videotapes from those workshops, and we created the story of students going through the workshops and learning how to take it to the next level, 3.0.
right.
But it's not about the. I mean, that's not my favorite. So I don't have a favorite. My favorite is to watch groups do it well. It doesn't matter what form it is. You know, as I was talking about Jonathan Pitts, he's got this whole thing where he creates with poles and cloth and creates these amazing 1 hour, like hero's journey kind of things with like Joseph Campbell stuff. So if it's done well, my favorite form is the ones that are done well.
Yes.
You know?
Michael, you mentioned you were together with Del Close, and Del was working on the Herald. What was the idea behind the Herald?
You're not going to like it. And again, this is as I understand it. I mean, I was a young guy entering the world of older people who told me stories. So I wasn't there. But as I understand it, the San Francisco committee was an direct offshoot of Second City. Some second citizens went and started it there. They all started getting television and film, so they started to get more and more popular. Robin Williams was around then, and WKRP in Cincinnati. It's old television stuff, but at the time it was really, really popular, and they were really popular. So they started getting a lot of people as guests who were television stars who were filming in San Francisco. And there was a lot of cocaine involved, and I think everyone's dead, so I can say that. But you know, there was tons of drugs backstage and tons of people, and they were doing scenes. Remember, it was improvisation 2.0, scene blackout, scene blackout, scene blackout. So their improv sets were going to like 4 a.m. And everyone was like, "This has got to stop! It's insane." So they wanted the cachet of having stars come and play with them after the show, which was great, and the audience loved it, but it lasted too long. And how can we get a whole bunch of people on stage doing our stuff, improvising, and make it a nice hour and a half set, you know, so we can go out drinking after. So they created this form called the Herald. And it was actually not the Herald, it's just called Herald. And as I understand it, they created it, and in rehearsal someone said, "What are we going to call this?" And someone else said Herald, and everyone went, "Yeah, that's a good idea." And as we said in Lyon, I think it came from Harold and the Purple Crayon, which is a really, really popular children's book series, and it seems to fit. But however it came about, Del came back to Chicago to direct and said, "I'd like to use the Herald." So he actually called every single person in the committee and said, "Do you mind if I borrow Herald and start working on it here in Chicago?" And they went, "Yeah, go for it, Del." And so he did, and we had these amazing rehearsals separate from Second City with the cast members at the time, and there are some really good ones. And he worked diligently on figuring out how to make it work. And we spent about a year and a half, maybe 2 years, working like at least once a week on Herald's, and then he brought it to IO. So Herald really became a way of telling story. Del described it as watching a movie in the order it was shot. So you'd have the lovers over here, and then the parents over here, and then you'd return back to the lovers. And more movies are starting to use Herald format. Pulp Fiction, if you know that film, I think is the perfect Herald, the way Dell envisioned it.
Okay.
Where
Was
it's
it at
like,
the time
it's not
already?
till the very end that all the pieces come together and you go, oh my God, that was brilliant. I get it.
So it was already group game, three scenes, group game, three
No,
scenes.
no,
No?
it wasn't. It was maybe it would start with 10 or 15 scenes
Okay.
that were totally disconnected.
Yeah.
And then one person from one scene would come down and be on stage with another person, and they'd look over and go, "Oh, you're the baker from the first scene. Oh, you're the midwife from the third scene. We must know each other." And they'd do a scene, and then another scene. So it would be like a funnel. It was starting with many, many scenes. A lot of the characters that were in the first round would fall away as being unnecessary. And then it starts to get the principles,
Yeah.
same character. So it gets more and more and more defined as you go. And that was great. And it came from a form called montage, which was just, I think it's being played again a lot. Just
Yeah.
step down stage, start a new scene. And so that, and then that same problem, right? The IO, Sharna at IO said, okay, I promise that everyone will get to perform every week. Well, she started getting a lot of students, and her shows were going to like 4 o'clock in the morning. And she went to Dell and said, how the hell can we get all the students participating if they got to do an hour-long Herald?
Yeah.
And he went, let me think about it. And so at the time they were doing David Shepard, because David Shepard is sort of the unsung hero of improvisation. He created Second City, he created IO, he created all these things, and he never gets credit for it. And he really is, like, if someone could do a book on David, I think it would be great, because he was crazy, but he was also brilliant. And he created all this stuff that we use today.
Yeah.
The three of us use David's stuff every day and we don't even know it. He was dealing with some forms that were like 3 groups doing 3 scenes each. So because they were using that, because David had started it, Del went, you could do like scene ABC and then a group scene, and then ABC2, and then another group scene, and then ABC3, and another group scene, like Converge and Divide, which was a Viola Spolin game. So we combined David and Viola, put them together. We're having we had breakfast every morning, and we're having breakfast. Sharna wants me to cut down Harold. I think I've cut it down to the lowest common denominator you can possibly have and still call it Harold. And so that was 3 scenes group, 3 scenes
Yes.
group, 3 scenes group.
Yeah.
And that's how it came out. It came about because of finances. And almost every innovation in improvisation has come out because people didn't have any money and needed some to keep the doors open.
The way we learn the Harrow over here in the UK is with an opening. So in some schools like DFA, you have, a word suggestion or location suggestion from the audience, and then you have 3 monologues by 3 different people from the back line. And then that's when you start your scenes after the 3rd monologue, because then you pull out something weird, something strange out of the
Like an
monologue.
Armando, if you're familiar with that form. It's like an Armando Diaz.
Yeah.
And that was sort of borrowed because Armando was working in New York when they started really exploring that. But I think there's been all sorts of different ways of starting Herald or any long form piece.
Yeah.
And what it is that you have, like, I don't know, 23 or 28 visual images a second popping up in your brain. But you kind of have learned to close off those images because it would drive you crazy.
Yeah.
So this is a way of opening that door just slightly so you can start to see some of those images. So there's been dozens of different ways. Some of it's group related, some of it's monologues. There's also, but the idea of all of them is to get your brain start start thinking about who's, characters you can play and environments you can explore inside the Herald. So it's to open up the gates of your imagination. And you can use any form that works for you, or any way works for you. So the cast goes, oh yeah, we're relaxed and we're open and we've got some little hooks we can hook things on maybe. And now let's start improvising, and to me, that's what a great way to start storytelling, because it takes you back to you. I mean, you have everything you need to improvise brilliantly if you just stop thinking about it and go out on stage and do it. We've got everything inside of us, and all the stories that we can tell today are there. We just have to access them, which is what a good writer does, I think. I think it's what a good songwriter does. It's certainly what a painter or a sculptor does. We're all doing the same thing. Just trying to open up those channels, chakras, whatever, and access some truth that we can share with our audience. About that, what's your experience?
I have heard that unfortunately Harold is only for improvisers audience, not for people that are not improvisers, because
Civilians.
because it can become a bit
That kind of I know that's become, it ain't the form's fault, it's the improviser's fault. There's all sorts of enthralling ways to improvise. But if you don't do it well, audiences aren't going to come. Look, so much of improvisation is done for students now. And we have a real opportunity to screw it up. We've got it's so easy to get like magic. Oh, that's what I was thinking this morning. Improvisation might be becoming like magic. In the 1920s and 30s, it was really, really popular. Every kid was doing magic. There were magic classes, all these Broadway shows with magicians.
Yeah.
And now it's a magician. People kind of, oh, well, okay. We're not too. And improvisation is in danger, I think, of becoming like magic was, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it does.
And it's not that the Herald is bad, it's the improvisers doing the Herald. If you watch really, really good improvisers who know how to do a Herald, it'll blow you off out of the theater. It's so brilliant. And you go, oh my God, it had like stories and subplots and threads that all got tied together. That was genius. And what a story. But if you've got people that kind of are leaning back on the form and expecting the form to save their ass, it's not going to work. They have to be solid in their craft, regardless of the form. So now you have all these improvisers working for each other, and somebody from the suburbs comes in to see the show, or from, town, and comes in to see the show, and they go, and the improvisers go, what are you guys doing here? Are you taking a class here? No. Did you take a class before? No. Why are you coming? Well, you advertised you had a show and we wanted to see what it was about. Oh. And they don't get it, because now and they start speaking shorthand. They say little things that mean a lot to the improvisers, but not so much to ma and pa suburb. And I use the word suburbs because I'm from North America, but just people who are not in improvisation who might want to see a show. Can we give those people the kind of show that makes them walk away feeling glad they spent money? And if we do, we can start paying ourselves. I mean, the fact that improvisers don't get paid pisses me right off. Why aren't we doing good enough work that people come, pay their money, and that money is some of that money goes back to the performers.
Exactly,
Like any
just
other
like
theater
normal,
gig.
yeah, it's like normal theater. Yeah, yeah,
Exactly, and it should be. It should be. I mean, at Second City, we were Actors Equity. We were union actors. We were paid. We got pension. We got health insurance. We got all the things that, we were union actors under union contract, and we did a good enough job that audiences came. And if audiences stop coming, change it up. Do something else. Be brilliant.
You said earlier, when we play improv, when we bring a good story, we should stop thinking about it. Are you referring to be in the moment? Because you hear that a lot. As an improviser, we should not plan. We should out of our heads. We should be in the moment.
I don't think it's when you create a story. I think it's when you improvise.
Okay.
So if you improvise really, really well, you're in the moment and you're not thinking about where it's going or what you're doing. You are playing the character inside the scene and you're improvising moment to moment with your fellow improvisers. Hopefully, at the end of that process, a story has been told that's good. And I feel that the best way to get to a truthful story is by living in the moment. Look, you always got two brains, right? You always got the actor on stage who's going, oh, that would make a great ending. Oh, we should go there. Oh, that would tie that up good. Well, I mean, it's like, you always got the actor's brain. But if we do our work true and well as improvisers, we make that actor brain smaller and smaller and smaller so that the character brain comes to the Brits, I understand, sometimes call it foreground and background. I mean, when you first start rehearsing a play, you're trying to remember the lines and you're blocking and all that crap is in the front. But by opening night, hopefully that all that actor stuff is receded and your character is out front. Your character is going through and you don't think about the blocking. You don't think about your lines. Those are actor voice that just whispers, don't forget you got a monologue coming up. Don't forget, exit left, not right. That kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. So be in a moment is actually your character brain taking over.
I believe so. And I think it's the same principles as good theater.
Yeah.
Improvisation and theater it's the same. It's either you're doing good theater without a script or good theater with a script. But to me, I've spent my whole career trying to create a bridge between improvisational training and theater training and the practice of acting, the craft of acting. And some people call improv an art form. It's like, boy, if you start calling it an art form, you should kind of examine that a little bit, because the minute you start thinking you're creating art, you're in a terrible, horrible place. But the minute you're doing your craft, and then someone else says, "Wow, that spoke to me. That's like art," and you go, "Thank you, thank you very much." I look at it as a craft, but hey, excellent. If you call it art, can I get paid better? Thank you. And it's the same when you're playing in a symphony orchestra. You're not thinking about it. You're just doing it. You're connecting with your conductor, and the thing you're creating begins to pull you. Whether it's a painting or a sculpture or improvisation or storytelling or writing, it doesn't, playing music, it's all about, is the thing you're creating pulling you? So you stop thinking about and trying to beat it and push it and smash it and, shove it. Because then the audience is watching the practitioner. They're watching the artist. They're watching the improviser. They're watching the actor. And they're not watching the story. So how can we tell stories? I think it's do the best theater we can do. I say in workshops a lot, think of the best theater you've ever seen, and then let's do that. Have you guys had a chance to listen or become familiar at all with Mike Nichols and Elaine May? They were original Second City cast members.
Yeah.
They broke away from Second City. They put up a Second City style show on Broadway in New York, and they were really the first people where America went, "Oh my God, what's this improv stuff? You know, what's this improvisation stuff about?"
Okay.
And they did their show, and they arrived at everything through improv, but they ended up doing a set show like Second City. I think you guys would just love them because they were honest, they were truthful, and yet their stories were filled with huge laughs and comedy. So there
Yeah.
was a lot of comedy, but there was a lot of truth.
Yeah. Yeah.
And some of it's culturally very American, but some of it's just universal.
Just funny.
Just the stories, the mini little stories inside of
Yeah.
each bit, are I think are universal to every culture.
Yeah.
So if you get a chance, sometimes they're on YouTube.
Okay.
Once in a while, there's a PBS, a public broadcasting system, which is a U.S. not-for-profit television, and they had it was one of their shows where Mike Nichols and Elaine May were featured for an hour, and it had a lot of their original Broadway stuff that was filmed in the theater.
Oh, okay.
That I think you guys would go, "Oh wow,
Yeah,
that's
definitely
pretty interesting."
nice to see. I don't know if we can access it from Europe, but yeah, it would be.
You should be able to. I mean, Google them.
Yes, we'll do.
And Mike Nichols went on to, he did The Graduate. He did all sorts. He became a really famous director. And Elaine May was a writer. She did like Birdcage and all sorts of, she did like 20, 30 movies she wrote. So they became really strong film people after they became kind of well known.
Yeah.
So, and that's what you want. You guys want to become really well known and then start making your own movies. Yay! Wouldn't that be wonderful?
Yeah, one should always dream.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No, I'm just fascinated by everything that Michael told us. It's all the story of how it all started, and it's fascinating. I think more people, as you say, should know more about this, about violence spoiling, and about how it all developed. So
The books are out there, so just go research it a little bit, and you'll find it. One thing will lead. When you do research, one thing leads to the next, to the next, to the next, and all of a sudden you go, "Oh my God, there's this whole cornucopia of stuff." But I hope people use whatever they learn to tell stories well and start making improvisation something people really want to go to and not kind of consider it like a joke.
Yeah.
That would be nice.
yeah.
Okay, Michael. Thank you so much for being with us. It was an amazing blast. So thank you for your insights and for the story.
Thanks for having me, you guys.
yeah,
It's such an honor to have people like you go, "Hey, we'd like to have you tell us about some of this stuff." And that's an honor. So I thank you.
Oh, thank you. The
Thank you
honor
so
for
much.
us to have you with us. This is the end of our chat. So we say goodbye to Michael, and thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you.